Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. First hour is generally open discussion around media and virtual production. Second hour is usually something we want to spend a little bit more time on. And our guest today is Todd Rains from Allen, Texas. And Todd is part of our family here. And he also does wood turning videos, which we have become obsessed with. So Todd's going to talk a little bit about how he got into it and how he does it. So stay tuned for that in the second hour. And then, of course, on Saturday, remember that there is, tomorrow we're going to have 2 hours of discussion. And on Saturday, we'll have education. Of course, we don't put that on YouTube. It's an incredible discussion about education or trading notes. So stay tuned for that. All right. And now we're going to jump into the questions. Bill, what do we got?
Our first one this morning comes from Rupert McCrae on Dallas, Texas, and he says, are there any thoughts from the panel on Zoom's Work Transformation Summit held yesterday on Zoom events?
Go ahead, David.
Which David? We've got two.
Right, we got a double David. Mr. Paskin.
Okay, sorry.
Unsurprisingly, they were selling a lot of Zoom stuff, but I was pleasantly surprised to see that it looked like they were using a lot of Zoom ISO going on there with the super sourcing and the lower thirds. It was nice.
How convenient. Go ahead, David Brady.
The production absolutely was, they upped the game there a lot. A lot of questions were flying by in the chat about it. I thought the overall message from some of the breakout sessions was positive in that it kind of reiterates a lot of the thoughts of the whole return to office thing and what employees might be thinking and what companies need to think about. And they had some demos of stuff that were kind of, but other than that, it was all good.
Rupert.
Yeah, I looked at it from kind of three angles. I guess one was the production value, which was interesting to see, and it was absolutely using ZoomOSC and ISO. They made a point of even saying that there's actually they've published a behind the scenes event coming up for next month, so that's out there in the links somewhere. And then the content was pretty honest and realistic. It wasn't only that Zoom's opinion; they had industry, analysts there and some representatives from some large employers. So they were getting second opinions from a wide audience. And the whole thing was on Zoom events, so it was a nice tight package, I think, as a Zoom events experience. They had a keynote and breakout sessions, and then a wrap up at the end. So I think they did a pretty good job.
It's good. I'm glad to see that they're upping the game a little bit. Were they still using all those virtual backgrounds? No.
All the video looked good. I'd say it wasn't obviously a virtual environment.
Right. I think the Zoom reps were definitely in front of physical. They were on set somewhere.
Success. That's all I'm saying.
We win.
We win. All right, next question.
I'm sorry, I gotta stop.
That's been like a 2-year campaign. Like it's just been this grinding campaign. Because the reason that we're so excited about it, if you're watching, is that Zoom using virtual backgrounds made it okay for everyone to use virtual backgrounds, and unless you do them well, Todd's doing his well. Most of the time, it does not work at all, and it's usually a horrible experience. And so anyway, so we no, even when you're aerodynamic like Chris, it doesn't work as well. Yeah, exactly. All right, go ahead, Jeffrey. Oh no, sorry. Next question.
Sure. Douglas Carmichael's up next, here we go. Do you think Apple Music will become the market leader in music streaming services? I've had both Apple Music and Spotify for a while and recently dropped Spotify.
Go ahead, Rupert.
I do think that, Apple are going to be leading the way on the whole spatial, experience. So maybe from that point of view, I just want to give a shout out to the underdog, though. I still really value my Pandora subscription.
Sorry. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, Spotify's leading the market right now, Apple being second, and what was it? That was third. It was Amazon that taking over the music. As long as Apple continues to grow in the share of the phone market, I wouldn't be surprised if it overtook Spotify. Mm-hmm. I'm surprised that Google Music never really got to the level of Apple Music. I figured it would just be convenience to have the with your phone with the same music plan. Mm-hmm. So.
Good, Bill.
I think Apple's bundling strategy, which is, I think if you get Apple's Plus service or whatever, if you get any two of their services, it's a very small increment to get all of their services, including the music service, and also things that people really want. Like, I know their gaming platform is not at the level of the people who are serious gamers, but when you've got that many people hooked into your ecosystem with credit cards in place, I think for a lot of people starting up, a simple single Apple subscription to the whole package will end up being the way a lot of families go. And I think that's a huge long-term driver of engagement.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
There can only be one, and it's going to be Apple.
I don't know if there can only be one. I mean, I think that Apple doesn't need to run this, and no one needs to win it to have a reasonable revenue stream. So I think that there can be, it's just like the BMW didn't take over, or Ford, or anybody else. There's lots of different services that will specialize in their own areas. I know that I will say that I am getting rid of Spotify. When I say I've said that for a while. Just getting all the playlists out is a thing. Like I have like 100 playlists in there. So it's like me extracting, and I listen to all of them, and I'm in this mood for this one. I have my workout one, and I've got my barbecue one, and I mean, I used to make my entire personality as a kid, I know you'd be surprised, was making mixtapes. So like exactly which song goes next is a big deal to me. Like that's why I can't listen to Pandora, because I'm like, that's not the song that should come after that song. Anyway, so the two reasons I'm getting rid of Spotify is number one, well, three reasons. Number one, why have two? To the point, other than the playlists that I was in Spotify, and to be clear, I was in Spotify. I've been in Spotify for over a decade. I mean, almost since they came out. So I've been a long time user. Number one is I don't see any difference except for the fact that the spatial is way better. The audio quality on Apple Music is so much better than Spotify at this point. If you're using spatial, if you're just using headphones, it just sounds so much better because it's not just the spatial mixes. They're using AI to spatialize the stereo. And so everything on Apple Music sounds better than Spotify. And then the third reason is because I feel that Spotify's fight to crack up Apple's App Store is an existential threat to Mac users. so I'm not going to give them any more money, because if this breaks up, it's the best platform to make money in the history of the world. A high school student can sit there and get on, learn how to program and pay for their college, or not go to college, or whatever they want to do if they're focused. I mean, that opportunity has never existed before, and it's a fragile thing. And Spotify, for their own reasons, want to try to crack up something that was really good for us. And so as a result, I'm not going to give them any more money within the next month or so. I'm almost done with getting all my playlists out, and then I will slag them on MacBreak every time I can. All right, next question.
I'll just note that in the chat, Jack B had how you can do it automated. So anyway,
I've tried. The automated versions don't work perfectly. So that's what I'm actually doing. I use the automated tools to move everything from Spotify to Apple Music, but it's not getting all the songs correct. So I have to go through, line them up and go through them. It just skips certain songs. They just don't have the same IDs or something, and they just don't line perfectly up. So I would like to do that before I kill the account.
Yeah, makes sense. Matt Cool in Montreal is up next. He says, a client has asked me to create a virtual job fair where HR reps could do an initial presentation, then meet one-on-one with potential hires. Has anyone done one of these, and how would you go about organizing it?
Go ahead, Chris.
I would think this would be a great use for breakout rooms, so you can't use a webinar. I would have an initial presentation and then put all of the HR reps in their own breakout room, and then have some sort of a hosty person say next, and then somehow they contact them. I don't know, text message. It could be as simple as text message. I'm done with Alex Lindsay. I'd like to talk to the next person. And all of a sudden, John Brito pops in.
Go ahead, Rupert.
Well, I mean, I've certainly been exposed to a few bad experiences in these kinds of things in the past. Maybe they're getting better now, but if you are, hiring, if it's for this own company to hire their own virtual employees and they're a virtual company, remember that the whole thing is going to be a reflection upon them. If that's how you're going to, that's the start of your engagement with those potential employees. So, and that's where it's your first opportunity to assess them too, how well they show up virtually in terms of the meeting. Your interview process starts right there. Depending on the scale, I mean, you could do it with breakout rooms, of course. If it's a larger scale, it might be a good use case for Zoom events. They have that, walk around where people can link up and do things like that. But I would definitely do everything I could to make it technically successful, because that's if that's the pipeline that you're going to be employing those people down.
You go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, from that said, I'm thinking that maybe have something like such as a green room or a prep room or something like that, where somebody's sitting there and all their job is people come in and they kind of give them a critique on how they look and feel, because a lot of times you think that okay, you don't have to dress up for those virtual interviews, but this is an interview for a job, and a lot of people need to do that. On the same token, maybe have a day or two before where you're talking with the HR companies and making sure that their audio and video is looking and sounding great. Otherwise, they're going to have a bad experience. They're never going to want to do it again.
Yeah, I think that especially if you're doing it. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here. We've done things that are similar, but not exactly the same. The big thing you have to decide on is, do the job applicants get to talk to each other or not? So are they something that, do you want them in a group together, or do you want them a group apart? Because that's going to lead you to a different way of approaching it. Because if you want to present to all of them, but you may still want them in their own little cell, not talking to anyone else before they go in, or do you want them to fill the time that they're waiting for you, talking to each other, or even talking to someone else in your company? So think about the idea that you're going to do a presentation. Then you're going to have some people in the company just doing Q&A, continuing Q&A with the potentials, while you have a bunch of breakout rooms, and then you're pulling people out one at a time. Now they're all sitting in that area, still asking questions, learning more about the company, doing all these other things, and you have your 8 breakout rooms that someone is shuffling them in one at a time. You also want to look at something like, this isn't the platform you want to use, but as an example, there's I think a YouTube thing where they show class.com, and you're going to see them moving classrooms around, all over. That's using the Zoom SDK. So what I'm talking about at first is just the vanilla Zoom. You can have breakout rooms, you can have this presentation area, you can have everybody, again, being able to answer questions, and you could make it a whole event. You could have multiple companies doing this. So you could have a main room where companies are, whatever. So there's a bunch of different ways that you could kind of manage that. And we've done things that are somewhat similar to that. But the main thing is, are they congregating? How do you keep them happy and interested in learning more about the company and getting more engaged while they're waiting to be interviewed? Those are the things you want to kind of think about. They are at that point your guest, and you want to think about the guest experience from the moment they come to your website to the moment that they leave. And how do they have an empowering, great experience all the way through that? So when they leave, they were like, I don't know if I got a job, but man, do I want to work there? And that's, but that's what you, to Rupert's point, that's what you have to leave them with, is maybe you didn't pick them today, but when they left and they felt so taken care of and everything was so organized that they, there's a company in St. Louis called WWT. And it was funny. I was like 4 people that I talked to. They go, "Oh, I know about WWT. I just really want to work there." like they all, just has a reputation in St. Louis. I mean, I think that Chad could tell us whether that's true or not. But it was like but the Uber driver told me that, that they really wanted to work there. So it's that kind of pressure then makes it easier for people to get, for you to find people, and finding people is the thing. Next question.
Next one comes from George Sita in Webster Groves, Missouri, and he says, what exactly is this super source referred to during the mic checks?
Go ahead, Chris.
George, I had never heard of the term super source until office hours. It is, I think it's a branded name of just having multiple boxes on a screen.
Can we show a super source on the 2.0? Is that
maybe
possible?
we can show one on the 2.0. So there's Alex is in one box. I'm in this one. Mm-hmm. And it's actually a button in the ATEM vernacular. You press the button and then you can adjust the size and position of those boxes. I literally had never heard it until office hours and sort of learning about the black magic world. But
we call it super source. Some people call it multi-box. Some people still call it multi-view, although that's usually used for the actual our work area. But there's a lot of different views for it.
Yeah, I think I would have just called it, a 3-up, a 4-up,
When I refer to other people, I refer to it as 3-ups and 4-ups and 2-ups.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're useful. Yeah, they're good. Next question.
Rupert McRae, Dallas, Texas, up next. He says, why might some users be hesitant about having a microphone prominently in frame? And conversely, what are the advantages of having a close proximity microphone?
Go ahead, Todd.
For my purposes, I need a wireless headset. I don't want wires wrapping around the work I'm doing, obviously at the lathe. So wireless is preferred, and so a headset worn because I need my hands free and my body to move. So from that side of the fence, that's where I'm at. When I'm in the office, it's a fixed mic, kind of like office hours. But out here, so it depends on the job, as I guess you would say, Mickey would say. It depends. So.
As someone who grew up around a lot of PTO chefs, I suddenly visualized the lathe and why you don't want to have a wired mic. Oh man!
Exactly.
Anyway, go ahead, David.
Well, I think for some of the mics seen, especially here in office hours, it can be a little intimidating having that thing in frame. But conversely, the dulcet tones that are achievable during close proximity to the microphone is an advantage.
Hey, go ahead, Mitchell.
Well, dulcet tones aside, it might be a personal achievement type thing for me. I like to have my microphone slightly off screen, and because it's a 414, it's really good at picking up sound without having to be right on top of it. And I really hate it when I see people leaning into the microphone or grabbing a mic and chewing it up while they're talking. So it's one part, I think, personal preference. It's one part what mic you picked. And it might just be because this beautiful face here doesn't want to be obscured by a microphone in any way.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
I've done shows with microphones, without microphones. The biggest advantage having this microphone right here is the fact if I walk away, you can't hear me. You can mostly not hear me if I go that way. But if I have a headset mic on, wherever I go, you're going to hear me from here. I started using, actually it was office hours that made me started using the microphone. But then when I found the underslung arm, so I could still move around, have my hands free, and just have a little area to be concerned about, it made it a lot easier. But then every now and then I'd have to for an unboxing video, I have to slip on the headset just to do that.
Yeah. The one of the big things is as the microphone moves away, you're going to turn it up so that you can pick up your source, and that's going to pick up everything else in your room. So you're going to hear more echo. One of the reasons we like to send headset mics to people is to make sure that they don't have to think about it, and it's going to be so close that no matter what's going on in their room, we're not going to hear any of that room. We do give up some quality in the area of sibilance and so on and so forth, but it really generally makes a big difference in a loud environment. So as that mic moves away, it becomes more problematic. It also means that you hear more detail in it as well. So it's not necessarily always a bad thing. Those are the big reasons that we look at it. I think that some people also don't like to look like they're working too hard. They just want to look like, oh, I just showed up and I'm just having a conversation with you and I happen to sound amazing. In the perfect world, that's what they're trying to do. All right, next question.
Simon Ray in Shrewsbury, UK says, if I were to host a Zoom show discussing movies or TV shows, what would be a good resource to help me stay on the right side of copyright law when including clips in the show?
David?
Well, I'm going to be giving something like this a try. I think, I'm no legal expert, but I would think that if it's a Zoom native event, you should be not, a lot of the copyright stuff won't be applicable because it's not a public showing per se. That being said, LegalZoom, no affiliation to Zoom, has an article that I'll put in Mukana. There's another organization, the MPLC, if you wanted to reach out and purchase licensing for public showing kind of thing. I'm not sure, again, of the rights and regulations in the UK, so check with your local barrister.
Local. Legally, I think that you still have issues when you put it on a broadcast, but Zoom doesn't have the mechanism to grab onto it. Go ahead, Rupert.
Yeah, if it's a private Zoom event, you'll need to just stay within the Zoom community guidelines. They have all that stuff published. I think it'll be fine. If we're going to broadcast it onto something like YouTube, then that's a whole different set of things. And again, I'd recommend Tom Scott's video on YouTube, copyright fair use, ins and outs on that one, if you were going to broadcast it.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, if you're trying to create a reaction video on YouTube, like a lot of the other people out there, the best thing to do is to turn Zoom into especially if you're going to have a panel, is to turn Zoom just into capturing the panel, have them watch on their own, have earbuds in, and then do the reactions from there. And then afterwards, marry the two pieces together. What a lot of reactive YouTube people do is they show very small clips, so it would do fair use. And keep in mind, fair use is just a USA thing. You go across the seas, your videos might get taken down or stop working from there. But once you do that, you want to do things like bring in a picture-in-picture, turn down the sound. That's what a lot of reactive video people do, and then of course play the clips as short as possible. And they say if you put a little bit of humor to it, that's even entering into a different type of fair use, but still very fair use from there. Yeah. And so if you do those things, then you should be golden. But if you just go straight on, and I know a lot of people, they'll do their Patreons and they'll do the whole video, and you can watch with them as they're putting the video together. And I have a feeling that's going to start being looked at, because some of these Patreon people are making like thousands of dollars just to do things like watch movies.
Go ahead, Bill.
Fair use is probably the single most misunderstood part of Title 17, which is the U.S. part of the law that deals with copyright. And I would highly recommend that if you're going to do anything in this, spend a little time on the Stanford EDU website about fair use. It's written in layman's terms, and it really gives you a good idea. There are certain categories of use, and criticism or critique is one of the fair use exemptions. But there are limitations on it. No one will tell you how many seconds of something you can use, because copyright law, anything in intellectual property, is all done by case law on a case-by-case basis. So following those restrictions strictly will keep you less likely to be sued. But remember that anybody can be sued for anything. So if somebody is a copyright holder and you get on their bad side for some reason, you could have a lawsuit based on this, and then it's up to you to provide an affirmative defense for why your use falls under fair use.
Yeah, and there's technical limitations and there's legal limitations. The reality is, if you're doing a show that has less than 1,000 people in a private environment like Zoom, chances of someone coming after you are very low. I'm not going to say impossible. This is not legal advice. This is just probability, that you're probably not going to have any real impact there. If you start making a lot of money at it, then people start paying attention. So that's usually what happens is they'll let you, because it's not in their best interest. You have to look at, they have legal fees. Their lawyers cost $350 to $550 an hour typically. So if they look at it and go, oh, well, that's going to be 20 hours or 40 hours of work to try to squeeze this, they have to know that they're going to be able to extract that tens of thousands of dollars from you, or it's not worth them doing. So there, there's a lot of math to it there. Usually what they do is they rely on the technical limitations to do it. So that's YouTube, Facebook they're looking at everything and then blocking it no matter what. They don't care whether it's fair use or not. It just this hash matches that hash, and now we're going to turn it off, or we're going to flag it. But I think in Zoom, we probably have at least a couple more years before that really becomes a thing. I know we are very careful about it in our after hours because we work in media. So we are a target rich environment. If there could be a lot of people in our group randomly that would get upset that we were playing something copywritten. And so we don't do it at all because of that issue, or we do we do it only in a moment in passing, but we wouldn't watch a whole thing because in our group, the ones that we own, because of what we do as in a living. That's why I never really got into the whole piracy thing, because it's complicated in our business. Next question.
Scott Mueller in Germantown, New York is up next. He says, I've been adding open breakout rooms for people to talk to each other at the end of Zoom meetings that I produce. Participation has been less than I hoped for. How do I compel people to stay on and connect with each other?
Chris. Oh, we lost Chris. Go ahead, Rupert. Can't hear you, Rupert.
I would say give those rooms a theme or an activity, or have a facility, or put somebody in there as a facilitator to generate the discussion. Two people, even better if you've got the manpower or the people or the volunteers. Try and get some people planted in those rooms and stir up a discussion on a particular topic, and then you can offer your guests the hey, room 1 for XYZ and room 2 for whatever else. And if you can get somebody in there to do some kind of activity. Yesterday in the Zoom event, they had a digital artist doing some artwork in the little break sessions, and that was quite stimulating. So just think of an activity or a theme.
Yeah, go Bill.
I would say also the tone and tenor of any show is set by the host and or the people who are apparently in command based on what people are seeing. So are you welcoming? Have you established? Are you saying specifically, we'd love you to get together and chat with us and things like that? A lot of this, I think, is body language and things like that. And folks who are trying to get shows off the ground often are so busy with things that they forget to do the human part of it, the connection, to say, you know, we'd love to hear from you over and over.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I just think that people naturally like to break out and talk to each other. It shouldn't take much to get people to join breakout rooms and enjoy those rooms.
Yeah, we took it very slowly here, and the way we kind of approach it is you have to generate the community before you allow it to subdivide, because people have to get to know each other. They have to feel comfortable with each other. They have to, now sometimes they already have that built in there. They have a certain affinity and they're excited about things. But I think that you do have to make sure that you're creating that connection in the main, in the plenary before you start putting them into breakout rooms, unless they're really engaged, unless they're used to this and engaged. Having them get used to a certain way of interacting with each other makes a big difference. So they get used to the idea that they're going to talk to each other. But what really works is a one-off is very hard, because everyone's trying to learn how to do the thing, because there's no way to do this yet. So everyone's trying to figure it out. We have been very successful in after hours and office hours because we've done it 600 times. So a lot of people know how to do it. We've got those things. And so when people don't know each other, it's a little, more, odder. We did have some rules about leaving cameras on for a long time. And that was mostly because if someone gets surrounded by a bunch of people that don't have their cameras on, it feels weird, and so that's, so we got comfortable with that to some degree because it made sense. And a lot of us started using it with our cameras off so that we could just listen to the conversation, and then it became normalized. But you do have to think about that. Also, having your key speakers who are just in your event, go into the after hours will draw people in to actually have conversations. And so having things happening in that event that people want to go to will get them used to that process. Finally, if I don't know what your events are like, if your events are very discussion driven, there's a higher probability that people will want to keep on discussing. If you're very in presentation given, they're long presentations turn people's brains off. Like, just so you know, like they're not, so they go into a passive mode, and unless you're a really good speaker, it's going to be very hard to turn them back on again for a breakout, unless you're really touching things that have them just their head explode. And so you have to be exceptionally good at what you do if you're going to go into a breakout and expect people not to be kind of brain dead when they get there. So, and when I say long presentations, anything over about 6 minutes. Go ahead, Rupert.
Yeah, hopefully your main event will have had good audio and good video, and people won't already be worn out by having been worn out by that stuff. So
right.
if for those follow-on sessions to be successful, and for people to want to stay, you will want to have good audio and good video. If people go in there and it's all kind of crazy, or it's noises or difficult, they'll just leave. So it has to be a audio and visually comfortable environment.
Yeah. And I will say that when I say that about long presentations, if you're doing something, if you're working on a car, or Todd's going to show us turning wood later, people will be watching that and they'll have a bunch of questions because they saw you doing things, but if we're talking about presenting or talking or showing slides, that's going to not be good for their feeling of interactivity when they get to the other side, unless it was really thought provoking. But if it's something about your business that you're trying to sell them and then you go into the breakout, you're probably not going to keep a lot of people. Next question.
Tobias Moss in Minneapolis is up next. He says, I'm using my Pixel 3 as a camera and video camera. Should I have the display set to neutral, boosted, or adaptive? And thanks, Charles Kline, our friend, for making me aware on this.
I think it was natural, not neutral, and I would always use natural. So don't let the camera do more than it has to on those things. But the Pixel 3 is a little older as well, and so I don't think that we were in a place where that worked. The only other one that I would do is potentially adaptive. Don't use boosted though, because it almost always looks hyper real. It's not a great viewing experience. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next. He says, when someone is directing a larger show, how would the communication structure be different to the Belfast Method with Richard?
There's a lot more hierarchy. So I don't know about from what I've heard when I watched the Belfast Method, there's one or two PLs. In a large event, there might be 15, 20 PLs, that are there, of all the different folks that need to be talking to. And so you're basically building a very complex matrix. I'm building one of these right now for an event next week, where these people have to talk to these people, and these people have to talk to these people. These people have to be able to talk to all these people. These people have to only talk to these people, but not these people. And then, so there's all the stuff that you build up. And I remember when I first did my first PLs, the guy told me I could do 4. And I was like, I don't even know what to do with 4. There's cameras and there's production. Like there's two PLs. That's all I could think of. Now, I can't think in less than 8. I get frustrated with Unity because I can only put 6 PLs on a page. It just makes me absolutely insane. Because for a long time, I used ClearCom where there was no limit, to the number of PLs I put on it. Well, 24, because I had 24 keys on the front of my panel, but that was that was my limit to PLs. So anyway, so that's what happens is you start to really build a lot more structure. And some people will leave it on. Like if you're listening to it, you'll hear the announcer and they'll leave their mic on one PL, but only turn it on to the announcers, on commercial breaks or when they're not talking or whatever. But you might they may just keep talking into it. So you'll hear what they're saying to them, but they're not, but that's, so there's a lot of, complex interactions that occur there. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Douglas Carmichael again. And this time Douglas says, how do you guard against out of sight, out of mind when working remotely?
I go ahead, Rupert.
I'm just wondering how to interpret the question, but one thing I try and remain ready to jump on a Zoom call at a moment's notice, because that could happen at any time, and kind of keep that as a state of awareness. They actually covered on some of this stuff yesterday again in the Zoom event, because they were coming at some of those themes from an HR perspective and a staff well-being and all that kind of stuff. So I'd actually recommend some of that content. But just for me, I just try and remain ready.
Responding to email quickly is super important. That's probably one of the most important things is in good audio video back setup, because you kind of situate yourself in the thing. But being super responsive in communication makes people feel like you're always there. Even what I would say long drops, even being gone for 15 or 20 minutes, can have people feel like you're doing something else. They're going to imagine something other than what you might have been working on something in focus, but so you just have to be really conscious to it. And it doesn't mean you always do that, but be conscious that long breaks between communication doesn't look good. Go ahead, Todd.
So I've worked 7 years remotely before doing this job. And so we didn't do a lot of Zoom stuff at that time, but the phone was always there. I was on the phone all the time, responding to emails, as Alex said. Also, being very good at your job and having that impact. If you have that impact, people will know you're there, and you have an influence over what they do. So that's important. And then the next thing is getting up there in person or showing up in person every once in a while. I got up there once a quarter to a company up in New Jersey I was working for. So other than that, just keep in touch with the phone.
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at it, I've been working remote for a long time now, and I've gone in and out of it for 20 years. And one of the things is that number one is I look at it like, well, I have more flexibility, but I don't have this thing. I think some people that I work with have this like 9 to 5, and I'm not going to respond to my emails or do anything after 5 o'clock or whatever. And I kind of feel like the flexibility I get for working at home is that I'm kind of available until I go to sleep. There's a couple of hours before I go to sleep that I stop because I can't think about work. I have to just stop and watch, go down and go to sleep. But before that, I will, when I get up in the morning, I check all my emails and I respond to almost all of them before office hours. Anything that had capped off between the time I went to bed and the time I just respond to all of that and have it all up, because that gets it out of the way. And then I have a couple of hours to do the show, and then I come back and I try to respond to everything. My email is I get a lot of email, so sometimes I miss them, but for the most part, I try to get back to those things. But I kind of view myself as available a lot. That is also being available when I'm running an errand at 2 o'clock in the afternoon because I don't have a meeting. That's the time I have to go get something. But I'm still checking my texts and my mail and everything else. So I feel like that's the trade-off. And some people don't like that. And I feel like people who don't like to have work moving all around them, doing it should work in the office. so it's just, or just know that life could be hard. It's a really challenging environment. It takes a certain kind of approach to it. But last night I was responding to emails because I know that they have to be handled overnight because there's some other country. So I'm handling stuff at 9 o'clock at night, and then I got up this morning and at 4 o'clock in the morning I'm responding to other ones. And so, but I think to me that's worked really well. It doesn't mean that I work 24/7. It just means that I'm responsive to folks. Next question.
Rupert McCrae from Dallas, Texas asked, when embedding multiple YouTube video clips in a single web page, is there a way for any auto stop for the player on the first video when the second video clip is started?
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So embedding is not, that feature does not work inside the embed. The only way to do it is through an external script. And I've found that an external script will work one day and then the next day things just don't. There's only been one other script that's really worked, and that's actually a series of play buttons. So they're external buttons, but the only way that it works is if the person hits the external buttons rather than the YouTube play buttons. Otherwise, the YouTubes will play concurrently.
The SDK has all kinds of hooks into the player, so you can use, as Jeffrey said, I don't know about scripts, but definitely there's an SDK programming language. Not only can you turn things on and off, you can set them to given endpoints, so you can jump to this 5 minutes in or 8 minutes out or whatever. So there's a lot of capability within the SDK. We do find that it changes like every SDK, but once you get it programmed, we haven't seen it change dramatically in a decade. Like little bits and bobs here and there, but nothing that it did take an update, but not a recoding or anything. Next question.
Paul Wellhouse from Austin, Texas what is the farthest away good quality mic?
Mitchell?
I mean, literally farthest away or farthest away good quality mic? I think that that's a very subjective question, but for me personally, I tend to like the large diaphragm German microphones. That would be the AKG. Certainly the Neumanns are really good microphones. There's a whole bunch of them out there, and they all have different applications. But generally, those types of mics, which also make them farthest away, very, very good, also make them very, very sensitive. So certain applications won't work well. Others, that's why you see some people using the PR40 up close and personal, because it's just there and it's purpose-built for what exactly it does. But for a great mic, picking up your voice, it can't beat a Neumann.
Go ahead, John.
So these are interesting. One of our longtime producers that watches us but never comes on the panel has these installed in the conference room at a famous university here in the United States, Nariva. These have, 40 or 50. It's a mic array. And he can go in the corner of the room and turn backwards, and you can still hear him talking. It's pretty amazing. It doesn't sound great, but they pick up almost everything in the room if it's tuned properly.
Yeah, and again, a lot of it has to do with the room. So we want to focus on the mic, but a lot of it has to do with the room as well. How live is the room, and what is it? What other ambient noises are there? If you knock a room down, you can get a shotgun mic to be 2 or 3 feet, 4 feet away, and it'll sound great. But you need to have the whole room treated in a way that it's not going to have reflections, because the further away the mic moves from your mouth, the higher the gain has to be, and that gain is grabbing everything around you. And so that's why we like to get closer to our mics, is so that we don't hear as much of the ambient noise that is required when we bring up what we have there. Next question.
Cindy in Colorado is up next. She says, I want to level and limit my speaking voice in vMix and make my voice sound better. Do Waves plugins work? And does anyone have any recommendations on which plugins I might need?
I think that anybody serious about audio has to use an unserious named app, which is the banana or the potato. What is it? Voice meter potato and voice meter banana. I probably would take them more seriously if they use a better name. But anyway, those are the two that I think are typically what people that I've talked to that are using vMix will. I'm not a PC user very much. But go ahead, Jeffrey.
So what I do is I always try to do as much as I can before the microphone hits into the computer. The more you add, and this goes for PC and Mac, the more you add into your computer, the better chance of you actually getting sync issues coming into your video are greater. So that's why I always use a mixing board coming in to do some of the processing, and then do very light processing once it comes in to level everything with other sounds.
Yeah. I mean, a great mixer is going to help you more than anything else you can do as far as putting those in or some kind of interface. I use sound devices because I have noise assist. So there's a lot of a lot of fans and other things around me that you can't hear because the noise assist gets rid of all of it. So that's one piece. It doesn't do any EQ, so you might want to do some EQ there. But it does have a limiter, and it does do noise reduction. So those are, and that's available in the Mix Pre 3.2 if you can get it, or the Mix Pre 6 will have that as well. But other things like an XR18 or other things, other interfaces, or even smaller interfaces will have they will have EQ and all kinds of other things to kind of bump things up. They may have some noise reduction. It won't be as good, but it's not bad. Next question.
Simon Livingstone in Windsor in the UK says, does the panel have any experience of the Hopin platform?
Go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, so last year, the American Association of Woodturners, the national organization, had a symposium using the Hopin platform. I was a participant, but also as a vendor. So from that perspective, that's where I'm coming from. So the experience was difficult because you got a vendor booth basically that has a limited Zoom functionality. At that point, they had just acquired StreamYard, so it wasn't fully integrated with StreamYard. And so you could only have 4 people join you in person in a panel view, even though there was 500 at the event or 1,000 at the event. Only 4 people could join you on screen, so you could have a discussion with 4 people. We're used to discussing with several tens or hundreds of people at one time when doing wood turning demonstrations. So that was limiting. The chat functionality was kind of awkward to work around. Not a lot of people did the chat thing. Trying to get people to click on your vendor page and then go in and click on a link to your external site. Not the best experience, I don't think. So these kind of virtual platforms are kind of not tailored for one specific type of event. And so they're general, and sometimes they work okay, sometimes they don't. Visually and audio-wise and switching-wise, I think it worked fine. But beyond that.
Hey, go ahead, Rupert.
Yeah, I've been into Hopin events a couple of times, but actually the thing most memorable about Hopin for me is that last year, at least at one physical event they attended, they had a booth and actually were bringing people into the platform from the booth, doing a podcast, and they're bringing people in, actually trying to, I guess, do the hybrid thing, but actually make their product relevant and usable in that moment. And I think that's something more and more of these platform providers will do. If they are going to have a virtual presence at in-person events, they're going to provide live exposure and interaction with their platform. And I think that was quite a good idea.
Yeah, I think that I think a lot of these platforms are going to have a lot of trouble. There was a huge rush during COVID to try to figure something out. I think the attempt to make a physical event in the virtual world is limiting yourself to both the limitations of the physical world and the limitations of the virtual world. So you have to get rid of one of those. And I wouldn't try to. I think all the little things that they're trying to do are difficult. I think that also with the purchase of Liminal, every virtual event, Zoom buying Liminal is a moment. That's why we brought them on, is because every virtual event company should worry, if they're not using the Zoom platform and they're not using the SDK and everything else, because you now have a crack team. I mean, the team inside of Zoom was already good, but you have a team that really understands events and really understands, how to extend those. And I think that that's going to, if you're not using the Zoom platform and not using the SDK, you're going to have a really hard time competing with everyone else, because I think a lot of us are going to be out there building bespoke solutions, which is we're going to work with the client. We're not going to try to figure out how to wedge them into what Hopin does or what these other ones do. We're going to design an experience that looks the way that the client wants it to look, which is what we did in the physical world, to be honest. Like, that's what you do. Everybody has a different way of doing that. But the other side of that is that I do think that vendors really need to think about having their own studio. like a really, their own studio for this thing, and then they're going to enter that from their studio where they have a way to talk to about their products powerfully, and they can do that, and they should be doing that every day. Like, they should be, even if it's 10 people, like, just you're sitting there talking to people, you should have a studio that you're using every day, not a singular event is really hard because you have to train everybody to do whatever they need to do in that area. Whereas if you do it every day, like we have, you can build a pattern. You can learn from it. They learn from it. So you adjust to the audience adjusts to you, and then you have something that really means something and connects people. Next question.
Next one comes from Stefan Fischer in Würzburg, Germany, and he says manual camera keeps on crashing for him. What are the panel's next best recommendations for adjusting your brio?
And that this is on the Mac specifically, I'm sure, because it's manual camera. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So you can also use third-party programs, the OBSs, the eCams, and stuff like that. And another free program I've talked about is called Cam Twist. Been on the Mac for many, many years. And so once you bring in that, you'll be able to do the adjustments. But I'd also try and figure out why that manual camera is crashing. Maybe another program's open, like on a web or anything like that.
My guess is that he upgraded to Monterey. So anyway, I think that's probably why. It's probably a code issue. The webcam settings is the one that I use. I've used all of them. And as far as an inexpensive $8 or whatever, that it gives you all the controls that you have with UVC. Cam Twist is great. Other ones are, there's eCam. Those add all kinds of other effects that might be valuable to you. And so to Jeffrey's point, those are great solutions. Mimo Live can be used as a camera. I've used that in the past. But if you're just looking for something that will get all the controls you possibly could have for the brio, webcam settings will do it. Next question.
Aaron Huslage, our friend in Durham, North Carolina, has a way that some of you who may be listening to the show can get more involved in office hours if you'd like. He says, we're working hard on the Office Hours 2.0 graphic and could use your help. Please contact Aaron Huslage on Discord if you're interested in contributing.
Yeah, so we're kind of working through those things. And so if you are a designer and would like to work on those things, or I'm not sure exactly, we're going to be working on more of that. But we'll talk to Aaron and ping them and see if you can find if you can find a place there if you're interested in playing with the idea, because we're going to be doing a lot of fun design. And one of the things we're going to be working on is designing into HDR, which almost nobody's done with their graphics. And so there's a lot of opportunity. Next question.
James Hutchinson at Dublin, Ireland up next. And he says 4, 6, 8, 12 multi-plug extension leads. Do you have any favorite and why?
I go to Rupert.
I'm reading this as like power cords and power strips and that kind of thing. So I'll give you just a few tidbits, I guess. I, first of all, don't use any domestic thing in a commercial or industrial setting. You've got to use ruggedized equipment for that. So anything that's, in the house stays in the house, and have separate equipment for taking out on site for professional use. And then second, for anything that's semi-permanent, like at the back of my desk or something, I like the long ones with plenty of outlets. It's just, they're a bit cumbersome to tote, around the place. And then I also remember that we had a second hour on this subject once, and it was my suggestion of a second hour, and I missed it because I was on a flight and I was really upset. I was really upset. But if you dig, I couldn't find a link to it, but if you dig through the second hours there is one on this whole topic, and it's pretty good. A whole hour.
We did a whole hour on power strips. So I'll show you a couple of the ones that I've used in the past. All of these I got because I went to my Amazon. These are not things that I would suggest, like theoretically. These are all ones that I have bought, and some of them aren't available anymore. But this one is not available. But this form factor I love. There's 2 of them sitting on my desk right now. What I love is I have this layout here, and I think I have. Anyway, let's see if I can get this to work. No, anyway. So what I love about this is that I have 5 2.4 amp outlets, and that's what I use to charge a lot of things. And when you get a bunch of these, I use these for top of the desk for clients, not for our production. So we don't put these into production, but we put them on the top of all of our desks. We tape them to the top, and we put Velcro on them. We put them on the walls and everything else. I probably owned 100 of these. I have a similar one that's smaller that I use. That's what I have on my nightstand. So that way I can charge a bunch of things, and I have a couple plugs if I need it, and it's smaller. This is the one I travel with. You'll see the international plugs. So there's actually a version of this. I just realized I grabbed the wrong photo. There's a version of this that has, no, I guess this is what I'm using. So yeah, this one's here, and then I can convert that plug, but I can plug any plug into it. That way you can use it all over the world. This little thing is the best way to make friends, because you can always find an outlet, because you can ask someone if they can unplug for a second and just plug in to double up while you're sitting next, you're sitting socially distanced. But the point is that this one's a great one because it works all over the world. This is the one that I use a lot in the office because those rotate. It's much easier to get wall warts connected to each other. This is the Belkin. And then if you don't do that, you can get these little pigtails. I have lots of them. And so you can plug those in, and that's going to give you more flexibility. Just tape your things to them. Otherwise, they get pulled out. This is the one we use in our kits, the ones that go out. So they will have, there's another version of this that I couldn't find the photo of that actually has a C13 input into it. So it has no cable. It's just C13, and then it has these international plugs. And the advantage of that is you can go to any hardware store anywhere in the world and buy a C13 to whatever the local plug is, plug it into that, and now everything is connected. And so that's another one to look at. And then finally for guests, what we put on the top of desks is often something that looks like this because it's cute, kawaii. So anyway, so that's the those are the ones that we did. I was trying to do a little Carl action there. That's a tribute to Carl. To have a little. That's what I did this morning. So I saw the question. I was like, oh, this one's an easy one to kind of throw things together. Anyway, go ahead, Bill and Paul, real quick.
Well, I thought once upon a time, because in my old studio, I was finished, I had 142 Edison outlets in that to plug things into. And I thought to myself, oh, things are getting smaller and easier. It's all going to be 12 volt and stuff like that. It turned out I needed more space when I moved into this place because of all those wall warts that don't fit in a standard outlet strip of 12 volts. It drives me crazy. So however many you need, triple or quadruple the number, that's what you're actually going to need.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill. Paul?
Yeah, I use what's called the CASA, K-A-S-A, Smart Power Strip. And it's you can control it from anywhere. It's got USB outlets, surge suppression, $50 on Amazon. KASA.
Nice.
Power strip.
Next question.
Tony Mobley, Noonan, Georgia. My current setup has 2 iPads connected to the ATEM Mini Pro, one iPhone XS Max as my camera, Filmic Pro, and a 3rd gen Apple TV. Should I remove the iPads from the ATEM or other device for another device like a Raspberry Pi?
All right, go ahead, David.
Yeah, Tony, I would say if the iPads are not being used to contribute anything into your stream, pull them out, put something that is. If you're using them to demo pages or show content, keep them in. But yeah, that's how I approach it.
Go ahead, Tony.
So this is my setup. You're looking at me on the iPhone. This is YouTube. This is us on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
This is Filmic Pro. And I also usually have this showing Discord while I'm cutting the show. And this is the Apple TV. So that's my current setup. And so I just wanted to maximize the best use for what I have.
I think 2 iPads is a lot. I have one connected to it. I think 2. I might be tempted to take one iPad out and put the Raspberry Pi in for playback. That would be the thing that I put it in, is use the Playout B and be able to connect it to the ATEM. So I'd be tempted to do that. Jeffrey?
Yeah, that's the only other way I would see that. Otherwise, you're just crossing into environments, and you're bringing in a whole bunch of new issues if you bring in a Raspberry Pi for something else, unless you have a very specific reason. The Playout B is a great reason. Then you can use the iPad to control it. But other than that, I would stick with your current environment and keep it all in one house.
Next question.
Andy Korkendorfer in Viera, Florida is up next. He said, opinions on LiveU Solo as an appliance for live streaming. My home office LAN could use some help. Thanks.
It might work as an added, as adding a modem or two to the LAN. So that could possibly work as an appliance there. So I think that's the LiveU for the LiveU Solo. I can't remember whether it has 1 or 2. Is it just 1 modem that it could potentially add? And it'll bond your local connection with the modem. So that could potentially make it a little better. I mean, a lot of times what you need is, its question is, are you constantly under bandwidth, or is it just fluctuating? If it's fluctuating, then something like a AWS, Elemental Link could be better, because it's using Zixi, and it'll just kind of even things out for you there. But if it's consistently low bandwidth, then I would consider something that's going to bump it up with a modem, if that's what you need. Next question.
Love this one. Craig McFarland in Boston says, I'd love to know how Douglas Carmichael can come up with so many unique questions. Do you update a queued list throughout the day?
Go ahead, David.
I think we'd all love to know how Douglas comes up with all those questions every day. It boggles my mind.
Superhuman. Yeah. So anyway, it's and you have to ask him during after hours. And Douglas is a lot of times after the show, after hours. Maybe he'll tell us how he comes up with so many. Next question.
Stefan Fischer, Worksburg, Germany, back into the question queue with what is a good, worth the money tool to measure light temperature?
Go, Jeffrey. Sorry.
So you can get a hardware version of that. A lot of Amazon options out there that do a very good job, but it depends on what type of light level you really want. If you're going for that studio broadcast look, if you're going for the YouTube look, then you might want to go for a little bit more. And then don't discount the apps that are on both the Google and the iPhone store, iOS store, excuse me. That because with the cameras nowadays, they do a really good job in detecting light.
And Bill, real quick.
Yeah, Jeffrey hit it. I was going to say apps for your iPhone or your other devices. They're really pretty good.
I mean, there's definitely more traditional, meters that you can get. So Sekonic is the one that I've used the most. So Sekonic you can do both different versions of it. Will tell you what the color is. They're hundreds or thousands of dollars, but those are also very accurate. Next question.
David Paskin in Miami here on the panel. Has anyone used the Squares.tv audio delay calculator yet?
Squares.tv audio delay calculator? No, but we are all now searching it. so we'll have to take a look at it. Let's take a look at it. Ask that question again because I've just bookmarked it. I'm always interested in audio delay calculators. Next question.
I love this one. Rodrigo Munoz in Stockholm, Sweden says, hey, to Alex, do you think it is possible to exchange an ATEM Extreme ISO for a few kilograms of hot licorice candy? On a more serious note, do you know how to stream from Zoom while you use multiple language translations in audio?
So we'll talk about the other one. It's quite possible. I love Swedish licorice. Anyway, so to do multiple languages, you have to do multiple streams. There's no other way to do it right now. We used to use multiple angles within the stream, but that's gone away. And so you need to do. I know that YouTube is working on other solutions, but right now you need to have. If you have 6 different things, you have to have 6 different streams. You will not be able to do it with right out of Zoom. What you'll need to do is capture it. You take the different interpretations and embed them into an SDI signal. So embed six of those languages into an SDI signal, then you can pump that. What we do with that is we push that into an elemental link. We send that up with all the channels, and then once we're in AWS, we split them all out. That way you only have one video stream, and it's much lighter than trying to do 6 video or 8 video or 14 video streams out. You send one video stream up with all the audio into the cloud and then use the cloud to break it up. And that can be done with Elemental or Wowza. So anyway, that's the... and we'll do one real question really fast because I think this is a good one.
Rodrigo's entering the show strong with from Stockholm with, I need to practice my ZoomOSC skills for February. How do I get in the team that cuts office hours?
Who should he contact? Who's the right person? Ping Chad and Chad will figure out who you should do, or Josh and
Dennis maybe,
or Dennis or JJ. Those are all folks. Ping them and they'll get you into the groove there. So now we're going to change direction. We're now jumping into our second hour with Todd Rains. Todd, how are you doing?
Good. I'm really good. It's a little chilly, but I turned the heater off. So now that I'm going to be moving, I'll be better off. So
excellent. So Todd, you do live streaming of wood turning. Is that correct?
I do live streaming as well as Zoom meetings for demonstrations, and when possible, in-person demonstrations. But hasn't done that for 2 years.
So this has been your business for how long has wood turning been your main business? Or I guess first of all, how long have you been doing it?
So yeah, a couple of questions there for sure. Wood turning for about 21 years as a hobby.
Did you start in shop class?
Well, I did a little bit of lathe work in shop class, but more flat work in shop class. And so I started flat work 30 years ago.
Can you define flat work for people?
Woodworking with boards, so flat pieces instead of round pieces. So, building small boxes, building, little TV cabinets for the house, fireplace surrounds, cherry corner cupboard, those kind of things, furniture type items. So it was really the corner cupboard that kind of got me started turning, because I needed posts between the cabinet and the hutch, and I wanted to turn posts. So
and then you found it was the best thing ever.
Yeah. So flat work takes time, right? Project like a TV stand or something like that, it's going to take a few weekends. Right. Wood turning, I can one evening and I've got a finished project. So the immediacy, the spontaneity of it, the satisfaction you get from it is quicker. So
it is. So it's such a, when I was in shop class, in metal shop and wood shop, it was my favorite thing. Whether it was metal or wood, it was my my favorite thing to do was turn. Like it's just amazing. So you, when did you start doing this as any kind of business, not full time, but just when did you start charging people for something?
I started the wood turning tool store, which is my business. It's an online retailer of wood turning tools. Yeah, 4.5 years ago. We're going to be 5 years in April. So it's a small home-based business. Just ran out of the house, and I got into it because.
Do you sell lathes, or do you sell just the
So as a home-based business, I have to be strategic in what I can stock.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, home-based. I was just imagining these big old lathes.
No, I don't sell lathes, but all the chisels and accessories, drive centers, other kind of tooling, measuring tools, those kind of things. So,
right. And you make them, or do you resell them?
Both. I've got a manufacturer here in town, a fabricator I work with on some of my tools, my stuff that I've designed and created, did all the CAD work for us. So he just he corrects my CAD work and makes it.
What CAD program do you use?
Fusion 360.
Oh, nice. Very cool.
Yeah.
And how did you get into streaming?
So, with starting the business 4.5 years ago, I was doing in-person demonstrations even before that for the club. So there's, like I said, the National Organization, American Association of Wood Turners, has chapters all over the country.
How many people, do you know how many people are in? When you said that, I was like, I couldn't even imagine that there was a National Association for Wood Turners. And I was like, of course there is. But is there, how many people?
Well, they say they have around 13 to 15,000 members. So
that's amazing.
And I think there's a couple hundred chapters. So there's in this Dallas-Fort Worth area, there's 5 chapters, 500 wood turkers, 550 woodworkers or wood turners in the area that are part of clubs. And so I'm currently the president of the Dallas area wood turners and have been the last 1.5 years and will be again this year. So. So yeah, getting involved with the community certainly helps. Getting involved with the club, whatever your hobby is, find your local, guys that enjoy that and join. A wealth of information, just like this community. So,
and so you started doing? Did you start streaming or Zoom first?
Yeah. So it was one of the. It was. Actually, a friend of mine that's probably in the chat, Cindy Drozda, she's been turning for much longer than me, been a professional at it much longer than me. And so she started into virtual demonstrations about 4 years before the pandemic started. Wow. So she's been doing it about 6 years. And before the pandemic, she did maybe 4 a year, maybe at the most. And I caught one of hers at one of the local clubs. I just happened to see it, and I knew her from trade shows and before. So I said, "Oh, that's something I should do." And that was January of 2020. And so I went out right after that meeting, and I bought a couple of webcams, capture card, capture card. And at that time, I was watching Aaron Parecki quite a bit on YouTube, and so I bought an ATEM Mini. And I got all those right at the beginning of February, right before the pandemic hit, and then nobody can get any of that stuff anymore for the next 6 months. And so it was kind of one of those things. So I ended up I did a live stream, I think, using StreamYard, I think was the first time I used StreamYard. And I think that's what I did. Mm-hmm. And so before that, I was doing YouTube videos, just capturing film on each of the cameras and post-production and posting YouTube videos. I've been doing that for the last 4 years of the company, marketing sort of thing.
Right.
And so I said, well, this little ATEM Mini is going to save me. I can do a lot of switching and record that. So and then I figured, oh, I can't record in the ATEM Mini. So I asked my daughter for a video assist for Christmas. And so got one of those. So maybe it was my birthday. I think it would have been my birthday. I'm not quite sure. So, but, and so I started recording. And then, the live streaming was very slow to begin with. At that time, right when the pandemic hit, a lot of the clubs are going, well, we can't meet, so what do? We hopped on a Zoom meeting. It was becoming popular. So, and then I figured, okay, how do I present to Zoom? And so I did my first club meeting, or 2 of them, were to my own club, and getting members on there. So that was really kind of the first sort of virtual presentation of wood turning that I had done. Right. And I think my actual live stream to YouTube was followed after that. So
that's great. And how much of, so now you do these on Zoom and you charge for them, right? That people actually pay to watch you do it or talk to you about it. How does that work?
Yeah, so it's definitely an income stream for a lot of demonstrators that can't do this in person. It was a big thing. A lot of clubs around the area would hire demonstrators come in person. So that revenue stream kind of dried up. So a lot of us, with the help of another community, Lucid Woodturners, ran by a fellow by the name of Alan Zenreich out of New Jersey. Started this, he's been a computer geek, a camera guy for a long time, and a woodturner. And so he's always been advocating this kind of virtual production for years. And so with the help of that community, a lot of demonstrators got involved with that forum, if you will, that Alan runs, and learned how to do webcam and vMix, and that's kind of the road. Probably 80-90% of the demonstrators went down, and I went down the ATEM road. With doing that, we figured, okay, if we professional demonstrators got paid money in person, we should get paid virtually. So for a club demo, a in-person demonstrator has to get paid for their demonstration time, usually 2 hours in the evening. So that's about 3 hours prep time and questions and answers and stuff like that. Usually they might stay there overnight. So then you got to pay for travel, a hotel, and their fee would maybe between $200 to $600, whatever they're charging. And so now the club doesn't have to pay the overnight hotel fee, doesn't have to pay food or travel. Right. So between $300 to $500 is typically what a demonstrator would charge for a virtual demonstration to a club. And so I've got one tonight actually for the Georgia Association of Woodturners out in.
So the individuals aren't necessarily paying for it. It's the club pays you to do the turn. And because theoretically you could, if enough people were interested in what you were doing, your income would scale, right? I mean, that you would have.
Yeah. Well, and that's how it evolved. So now a lot of professionals are doing personal remote. We call them interactive remote demonstrations, or IRDs, PRDs, personal remote demonstrations. The remote demonstrations. So that we're trying to figure out a term in our own community.
Interactive remote IRDs. I like that. Yeah. I like that. Interactive remote demonstrations.
So that's kind of what we called them. And then the ones where we charge the individuals for the people that have that ability to charge a ticket or get a PayPal sort of ticketing system going, have been doing that. So that kind of started up slowly afterwards, actually fairly quickly. So on my own website, I've got a ticketing plugin for my WordPress website. And if I put up an event, I'll market it, send it out to newsletter, and people can go on the website, buy a ticket. And usually those are about between $10 and $20 a head. And so, my last personal demo, I had 140 people join. Cindy routinely gets over 200 per demo. So it's an income stream that's supplementing what we used to get as professional demonstrators. And I'm not really I wasn't really very experienced at personal demonstrations. I did a lot of regionals.
Right.
But people like Cindy or several other demonstrators like that would travel the country, travel the world, and demonstrate all over the place. So.
Yeah, because it seems like you get to a point where you could charge a certain amount that you can make thousands of dollars per unit. Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah. Can you show us a little bit of your rig?
Sure. So,
and by the way, for those watching, you can ask not only about the wood turning and the business and the model, but also about any of the gear. This is what Todd does. And so if you're curious about those, we're going to open up to questions in a couple minutes. And but go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, so I'm on a virtual, it's a green screen. So I made a little office hours background for today.
That's good. I like it.
So it's typically how I'd start a demo is with a background of some sort, usually a club banner and a topic that I'm going to talk about. But for this, I just made a virtual background. I'll show you the overall just so people on office hours can take a quick look and see what my shop looks like. So this is my shop area. It's a 2-car garage, and this is probably on the far side where the camera is. It's right in the middle. Beyond the camera is the other side of the shop, which is wood storage, table saw, a few other things. Drill press. I've got a kiln. My wife and daughter were doing glass and ceramics, and the beer fridge, which holds more than beer. A few other things on that side. This side of the shop is, as you see, green screen, mechanical cabinet for all the tools. Drill press is here, a tool wall with some of the accessories needed for turning, and then the lathe with all the camera gear. So we've got a G85 up here, Lumix camera. We've got a Sony RX100 down here. We've got the Studio 4K Plus as my main camera on a teleprompter. We've got monitor 1. We've got the video assist. This is a little keyboard tray that I have with my keyboard on it. The Stream Deck sitting on top of the lathe headstock, which does all my switching. I've got the ATEM Mini still here, plugged into my ATEM Mini Extreme, and my laptop, which is sitting on a box.
What are you using the two ATEMs for?
Well, if I got 2, why not use them? So
yeah, no, I'm using 2 too. So I'm just always curious, like how other people use 2.
So I've got, and I'll go through all the inputs here in a minute, but basically I have, let's see, I have my headshot replicated here, as well as down here on the ATEM Mini. So that's now the ATEM Mini, you can't tell, but I have it replicated. So I got help in office hours for that one about how to do the, replicate the Studio Camera 4K in ATEM Mini Extreme and ATEM Mini, but also get the camera control. So so that works well.
How did you do that?
For that? With a Blackmagic bidirectional converter and a HDMI to SDI converter.
All right.
So and just route the one and then split the HDMIs.
Yep.
And so that works. You have to turn on the ATEM first before the studio camera. So otherwise the control doesn't work. So so down here, let's
That's
see.
An important
I've got,
note, by the way. You're watching.
Yeah. Yeah.
Took me a little time.
Yeah, it did. So let me see if I go to this is the ATEM Mini. So on second input, I've got my a mirror cast. So it's the casting device. So I cast my web page to it. It's just a quick and easy way for me to get my web page up there. Third on the Mini is a little Mica back. It's a little playback device I really don't use, so I've got an extra input. And this is Playout B. So this is the where I've got Raspberry Pi connected. Back up onto input 1 on the ATEM Mini Extreme. Headshot camera again. Camera 2 is the overhead camera, showing the lathe bed. Camera 3, which is off right now, which I got to turn on, is on battery. Camera 4 is a wide shot camera. That's the Lumix G85. Let me get, I normally have camera 3, which is my tailstock camera, powered by wire, but I've decided to put it on battery and wireless transmitter. So at some point we can pick that up and I can move it around and show the studio a bit closer. So so that one's connecting on Hollyland. So yeah, so this is kind of the overall shot of the shop with me out of the way in the corner.
That's great.
So yeah, so that's if I leave it there.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to just, I've got a couple of presets. So there's kind of a closer shot of what I sort of see, the headstock and stuff like that. And this is the Avaya Huddle Cam, by the way, that's doing this. So there's I don't use this in demos. I don't use this camera. I use this camera for after time discussion. They want to see what setup I have.
Right.
This is the tool drawer, so all the turning tools are in there and stuff like that. And then I think this one is tool wall, so they like to see that sometimes.
Right.
And then some more tech stuff. So
that's great. And did I see it clearly? You built like a nice little case. Did you build a nice little case for the ISO?
Yes, I did. Yeah. The box here, let me turn that off, is not shot. I think it was shot.
Yeah, you can.
Yep, that one. That was the one. So yeah, this box is a wooden box. It's sitting on a monitor stand, like on top of it. I built a little disc underneath it, wooden box, and so I can rotate it and lock it in place. It's inside is all the cables. Inside, if I open up the a little bit, you can see this lid opens up.
Right.
All the wires, the routers in there, the brick for the PC.
And is that kind of like a little wooden mortise around the switcher? Is that what's holding in the switcher?
It's just a shelf. It's a shelf. Yeah, so it's a little shelf. It's a wooden shelf. What you'll notice though is I've got this little angle iron here.
Yeah.
I'll show this closer later on. That's covering in a fade to black. Because I would always leave my hand.
There's a couple scars that anytime you see someone do something like that, you're like, that happened a couple times.
Yeah, so that's my solution. I cannot hit it. So
can you, before we jump to the questions, maybe can you show us a little bit about what a demo would demo how?
Sure.
Just a little bit of turning. Yeah.
Yeah. So let me get that back on. So I would typically start like this and introduce myself, and then run through a couple slides here. And I do myself load down in the corner here as we go through the demo. I'll talk to some pictures and stuff like this. So this is kind of what I'm doing tonight, a little plate thing. I'll show a little how to do that sort of plate. There's a couple of different versions of it. And that's typically how I'd kind of go through an intro. Maybe a bit of a plan on what I'm going to do, some sizing and dimensionings for people to look at, and then finish it up with that. And then we'd go to the overhead. So we got this shot, and I'll do a little bit of turning here. We'll get that. I'm just setting up my other camera that I had turned off. So tailstock camera there. And the wide shot there. I try to get them balanced, and this guy is a little bright. So I'll usually try and tune this just before the meeting. So now I've got camera tailstock of that one pretty much exposed correctly. This overhead light, overhead camera is an old Sony CX110. It's about 15 years old. Doesn't have quite as good of picture. So this is the next one that's going to get replaced. But this one I have on a slider that's mounted to my ceiling.
That's awesome.
And so I can move down, and then it's got a zoom control. So I can get zoomed right in and see where we're at. So this is typically what you'd see in the demo, me in the corner turning something here. So,
and what are you using for that overhead slider?
That's Canova, P1. It was a Black Friday sale 2 years ago. I bought it for photography, actually for the YouTube videos. I like those slow moving B-roll shots.
Yep.
So that's what I had used it for. But I thought, well, let's mount it to the ceiling, and it has been the best thing for demos.
Oh yeah.
So getting let me widen that shot out a little bit. Getting my tool rest up and in place. So this is just a little piece of sycamore, I believe, maple maybe, on the lathe, and I will get a proper tool here. So I've got a little bench of tools. I don't know if it's in. Let me see camera 7 quickly for a second. Go back to the wide shot. So I don't know if you can see it there. Right here. It's a little rolling cart. I've got a couple of them in the shop, and I just load my tools on there, and I can get them fairly close to me. I'm standing on a kitchen mat, nice bouncy one. I'm wearing my slippers, so typically I'd wear my my big boots, but since I was just kind of not going to turn a whole lot, I just put the slippers on. So this is typically what you would see, and then I may do a picture-in-picture as well. And when I do that, I can move this, into frame it up a bit better. Right. And this G85, and when I do productions, I try not to move the cameras too much, but I do have to move them. So there is some times where I pause and move cameras and stuff. So safety glass is on, lathe is on. I'll just true this up a little bit. And I can change picture-in-picture just by holding a button. And so I'll show you that. That's Stream Deck. Stream Deck shortcuts have been very helpful.
Oh, yeah.
So the sound is one of the important things, and why I typically have my my mic in low echo cancellation. I find that when I look at the video recordings back, if you got the echo on or the cancellation on, then all this lathe sound goes away, right, and it makes it very. You're right.
Also that lathe sound tells you something, right? I mean, it tells you what you're doing, so it's important.
Yeah, it's very important for the customers or attendees to kind of hear that and stuff. So this is a skew chisel, and I'm just trying to take the bounce out of this piece. And I'll take the speed up a little bit. If I go too fast, it gets too loud. So I'll usually, I usually turn around 2,000 RPM. The sound level is about the right level. We're getting some sound from the wood because it's hanging off the lathe so far, but we're going to make a little top. My phone was ringing, so I have it upside down, but it's not doing that do not disturb thing. So during my demos, the audience is usually fairly quiet, but so you end up being a guy that has to talk quite a bit. And so I'm typically talking nonstop as I'm demoing and telling them, what I'm doing using
it's kind of a Bob Ross thing, right?
Yeah, happy little clouds.
Oh, happy.
So we're making a little handle for this top. Oh, thank you. My wife just popped in, took my phone away. So she's my co-host typically, or my helper when I need it and stuff. So just trying to, I really don't have a plan on what I'm turning, other than turning a little knob for a handle. A lot of people turn tops the other way around. They'll turn the spinning part first. So I'll just switch to a small bowl gouge. It's just a little bit more comfortable for me. So usually your most valuable tool is the one you're used to.
Right.
And so let me zoom this in a little bit. Oops, wrong way. And that's not focused. This is one of the things with the RX100 is I might be too close or too zoomed in to focus. So something I'm learning about this camera a little bit. There, it's a little bit better.
It's grabbing onto that text because it's easy.
Yeah. So you get a little bit, and I've got this new light that's brand new, this
Right.
Aperture 100D that may be a bit bright for the exposure. Although I think, is that focus? That's focus ring.
Yep.
There's a way, and I had it set, I think, before, where I could get that outside ring as, there we go, aperture. So I can dull that down a little bit. And
for
make
those
it not so
watching, we're
blown
going to
out.
jump into the questions in about 3 minutes. We've got a bunch of them picking up.
No problem. And we'll I can take some questions as I'm turning a little bit, but I'll try and finish this up here in 3
No,
minutes.
that's fine. We can go ahead and throw some questions at you. Go ahead.
Sure.
Bill?
Sure. The first one comes to us from David Brady in New York City. David says, what are some of the biggest challenges when producing a show in a place with dust and so forth? Do you have production gear in a clean room? And by the way, my brother is a sawdust engineer, looking to help him out.
No, there's no clean room here. So, yeah, it's gonna get sawdust everywhere. That's just the nature of the business. So, what I have is an air compressor and air gun, and I'll just blow dust off of everything when I'm done. I'll vacuum everything up. I try and keep it as clean as I can, but things are going to get dusty. There's just no two ways about that. I'm looking for my remote. So if I look at this closer shot, you'll notice I have plastic coverings over my keyboards, at least for the ATEM. So this is just blue tape with kitchen wrap plastic on top of the keyboard here. Same here, I got orange tape on this one. So there's plastic wrap over this. I haven't covered the vents. The keyboard on the laptop is covered. What I have underneath the keyboard or under the laptop is holes in this wooden base so that and they're placed exactly where the fans are underneath the keyboard or underneath the computer. So at least I can draw some air. I will let you know, however, that when I dismantle this, I usually do it about once every 3 months. I'll take my air gun and I'll blow them out. It's amazing how much dust comes out of the ATEMs and the laptop. You just blow them out and there's just clouds of dust coming out. Oof. So they still survive. They still survive. They're amazingly hardy pieces of equipment. So, the things that kind of get me are sticky keys with little sawdust bits in between the keyboard.
Oh yeah.
That's about the only thing. Everything else is working out. The lenses, I cap most of them. The studio camera's under a teleprompter hood, cloth hood. So that lens should be okay. This one's not a problem up top because it's facing down. It's not going to get sawdust there. But other than that, it's just a matter of just living with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just the way it goes.
Let's go to the next question.
Looks like John Snyder in Reno, Nevada says, what's the most unique material you've turned? Do you have any unique examples to share?
So a lot of people turn some resin these days. They'll mix up their own resin and turn it. I haven't done a lot of that. It takes some equipment to do. For me, it's wood. I've turned all kinds and species of wood.
What's the hardest to work with?
There's Texas ebony it's a hard wood, and it tends to crack. So the woods that crack a lot are the worst ones. Mm-hmm. And so that's really kind of just a matter of taste. I like the closed grain woods like a maples or sycamores. Right. Although I do like ash. Ash you can do a lot of stuff with, and I'll maybe show. So here's a few pictures of the things I've done. This is I think this is cedar elm. This bowl. It's a bowl and bowl. It's a special product that's one piece of wood where I've kind of turned it in such a way to look like two bowls set inside each other. So that's one of my demos. And these are topics of demos that I do. These kind of next slides. This is a couple of different bowls that I do a bowl orientation class with. The wife is bringing me props as we speak. So It's nice. So this one shows different patterns in the bowl. This is from the same piece of wood, just oriented differently. You get the one right above me, you get that sort of star pattern in the grain.
Mhm.
The one on the other side, you get the ring pattern going all the way through it, but same piece of wood. Spatulas, special kitchen tools. This may be good on the cooking hour. My wife loves this design, so I turn these.
I know somebody who made a lot of money making those by accident. But that's great.
Yep. Little whiskey barrels. I've turned these. These are a lot of fun little project. So I did some.
Awesome.
So this is some piece of pine, just some decorated with some burning and stuff. So, and there's the inside of it. So a little keepsake box, if you will. And then this wine glass, which the wife has brought out to me. So this is ash, and this is dyed black, and then there's some cream filler that fills the pores, and so you get that nice sort of contrast of black and white and stuff. So, and that's kind of some of the projects that I've done for demos and stuff like that. So here's the ash bowl goblet here. Here's a resin egg. So this is a cast resin, and inside is a sort of a seascape scene. So somebody's taken the time to put all these little fish and seahorses and coral inside some resin and cast it with some bit of wood at the bottom. And you get it as a blank, and then you turn it and
that's amazing.
Polish it up.
Yeah.
So
next question.
Next one comes to us from Rupert McRae here on the panel in Dallas, Texas. How wide are your online audiences in terms of reach and location?
Oh, yeah, good question. That is, we get people all over the country, all over the world. So routinely we'll get folks from the UK. We've made a good bridge across the pond. I've demonstrated to a few UK clubs. And my last demo had people from Netherlands, Israel, Australia, and across the UK and the US. So it's worldwide. So it's there's a good audience. I've got customers across the globe as well for my business. So it's been good to kind of get that exposure. It's a little difficult to plan times. Noon typically is a good time. East Coast can see it, UK can see it, Europe can see it. It's a little early for the Australian folks, but 5 a.m. is not so bad.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from John Snyder in Reno, Nevada. He says, tell us about your most exciting mishap while live streaming. How did you manage it?
So it's Cindy's probably chuckling to herself as well. It's kind of what I like, believe it or not. Catastrophes, none. So you get competent enough and understand what you're doing enough. You're not going to have anything really, really disastrous go wrong. But little mishaps happen. You hit the wood the wrong way and something breaks. You just make a design change. I will say that when I was doing an in-person demo, I had a log with bark on it, and whenever you're dealing with something a little bit bigger, a little bit scarier, you wear a full face shield and stuff like that. I've been hit in the face with this with a bark piece, fairly large, and
you think to yourself,
this.
I'm really glad I had that on.
Yes, exactly. And then you get the fresh logs that are freshly cut, and you got a whole stripe of water or bug guts or stuff going up and down you because it's so wet. So depends on what you're turning. You can get messy. Right. So
that's great. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Douglas Carmichael, and Douglas says, have you ever thought of working with museums or other traditional historic sites?
So I don't. I am not a turner that sells things. I don't do gallery work. So I don't do craft shows. A lot of turners do. A lot of turners do that kind of stuff where they.
So your real business is turning and selling the tools for it and selling the knowledge of how to do it.
Exactly, and the third one most important, right? for sure. There are Cindy's been a gallery artist for decades, and so that kind of experience gives her a specific audience, or an audience that or the expertise to teach what she does so well. For me, I'm a competent turner. I know how to turn fairly well, but I don't have that background with artistic design or design elements as much. And so I look at myself more as a practical turner, a teacher, mentor or guide, if you will. And so the stuff I turn is usually one-offs. Although if I'm doing a demo, I've done the piston box and the bowl and bowl and all those demos so many times. But I don't do a production run. I don't do gallery turnings, that kind of stuff. But others, there are plenty of them that do, and it's been hard. I think the gallery stuff has been something that hasn't really. There goes my battery on my little camera. So hasn't really been around or been available for a lot of turners lately. So it's something that's kind of this whole talk of NFTs and stuff the other day got me thinking about, well, could it be a digital version of a gallery item that she's turned? So that may be something to think about,
especially when you're going into the design area. Someone might want that. That's what I'm really focused on is for NFTs is really around 3D models because because it's something I know, in that area. You were gonna say something?
No, I'm just focusing my camera.
Yep. Next question.
John Snyder in Reno, Nevada says, it seems like sustainable uses of production waste are all the rage. Are there many uses for the sawdust that gets left with turning?
So a lot of people compost it. Got to be careful. Certain woods in your garden bed, not good. You got to worry about bugs. So a lot of the wood that we turn is cut down from urban issues, whether it's windblown or taken down from a tree service. So we'll, clubs are famous for that. There'll be a newsletter blast. Hey, there's a tree down in this guy's neighborhood, and so people will flock and go pick up wood. So in this area, pecan, hackberry, there's some ash, although we got ash borer beetles. So there's a lot of infestation of borer beetles in the ash trees in the U.S. now. Cedar elm, and some other ones I'm forgetting. We don't get a lot of walnut around here. We don't get a lot of cherry, so we have to kind of import that. So utilization of urban deforestation, if you will, and then recycling. I don't do so much. Mine goes in the trash, the recycle bin. Actually, the recyclers don't like it. They've dumped my bin once or not picked it up once because I had too much sawdust in there. So, but a lot of people do recycle it. I've often thought that it should ship to Traeger pellets and where they can make, the grill pellets out of it. But I'm sure they got plenty up there in Oregon. So.
Right. Next question.
Rupert McRae, Dallas, Texas, here on the panel. As next one, do you operate your live stream sessions by yourself, or do you have other people ever helping you with co-hosting, facilitating, or interaction?
It's all by myself. We're solo production artists. I've been helping Cindy as a co-host, and I've got a co-host when I do personal demos. Club demos, it's usually the co-host is usually a member of the club that you're at. So, and all they're going to do is really mute microphones, check the chat for you, speak in your ear if somebody's got a chat question. Or let you know if you got a camera out of place or out of focus, that kind of thing. But otherwise, it's solo production, and so that's the reason why the Stream Deck is so handy and that kind of controls.
Next question.
Next one comes from James Hutchinson in Dublin, Ireland, and he asks, what mic and in-ear monitors does Todd use? Are they wireless, and do you have any issues with sync, Todd?
So my mic is a Shure PG31. It's wireless to my belt pack, and then that goes to my receiver over there, and that is wired up into my headshot camera. So when I am on camera, my audio is synced to the headshot camera. Nowhere else do I really need to care about my syncing audio, right? So it's only in that one camera. That goes directly from that camera into my ATEM. So it's always in sync at that point. When it gets to Zoom, I don't have any control. I think maybe there's some, it's from my ATEM directly into the computer. There's no hub or anything in the way. So I shouldn't hit any USB delays. So should be good from there.
Next question.
Next is from Douglas Carmichael. I think Todd brushed up against this earlier. How do you deal with dust getting into the ATEM buttons?
Yeah, so plastic kitchen wrap, basically on top of the keyboard, taped down.
Next question.
Found that.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I just found that the blue exterior painter's tape doesn't leave a residue as much. So the regular blue tape, use the exterior stuff. It comes off a lot easier.
Oh, interesting. Next question.
Robert Soji in Los Angeles up next said, could Todd talk about the evolution of your lighting and what you currently use?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Sorry, I'm just pulling out some colors because we're going to put some color on this. Lighting, so that's a good question. So here's the green screen, and up above it I've got two newer sort of 10 by 10 LED panels. And they're, I think, pretty much at 100%. They're not very bright panels, but it lights it fairly well. And so that has been a big help in getting this green screen right. Before I had some spotlights or some old shop lights, and they were just too harsh or not spread enough. So I think that works well. Gives me a pretty good key. Then the big one, I'm zoomed out, so let me go back to full zoom. Yeah. Come on. Oh, she's not going to respond now. That's the one thing about the Zavaya. Oops, wrong button. There we go. It sometimes doesn't respond very well. This big, what do you call it, a China ball the other day? I think somebody called it on office hours. Mm-hmm. The lantern. So this Aperture 100D is brand new. I got it just over Christmas, and so this is the first time I'm using it. It's a big change over. I had a sort of a cheap knockoff light with a, what do you call those twisty CFL bulbs?
Oh, yeah,
5600, yeah. Wasn't near as well lit in here. Mm-hmm. This might be a little too bright. So this is, in fact, I may have to get another one for my wife. She loves it for doing her puzzles. So she's been doing puzzles lately, and so she had it. We had it in the living room, and she was doing puzzles, and I took it away, and she was rather disappointed. So
next question.
Yeah. Robert Soji's back again from Los Angeles. What tech is Todd planning on improving this year?
So this overhead camera, this little CX110 is probably the next camera to get replaced. I really like the Sony RX100s for what they are. Mm-hmm. The Mark 7 especially. I think Cindy has a couple of them now, and so that's probably where I'll go. So let me ask you guys, or Alex or anybody, what color do you want to see if I switch that and do that? So we're going to put some color on the end here. I've got blue, green, or pink.
I'll go blue.
Okay.
Second vote for blue.
So I've textured this surface with a texturing tool there. So that's got a bit of blue. I'm going to put some pink in the middle just because it'll be a good contrast.
That's cool.
Yeah, so a little spiral texture with a spiraling tool. That's on the inside. A little knurling tool, metal knurling tool on the outside.
That's great.
So
it's really cool. Next question.
Next question comes to us from Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas. How do you handle fire safety in your workshop studio?
I've got smoke detector and a fire extinguisher over there. And there's another one of the guys that I've been working with, another turner, Lyle Jameson, has got this. He's been talking to me about this fireball thing. It's a new thing. It's basically I don't know what the material is, but inside it is an extinguishing material. And so it's heat sensitive. So once heat hits it, it explodes, which sounds counterintuitive, but all the extinguishing material smothers the fire. Right. So I may get a couple of those. I know Cindy has a few of them. So that would be a good thing to kind of hang around or stick around in the shop. But have a good fire extinguisher, smoke detector, and just be conscious of what is creating heat. I've got a right below the lathe bed, I've got a garbage can, so you can kind of see it under there. So most of the shavings gathers the bulk, but if I'm doing something where it's creating heat, whether it's drilling or doing some burning, this will obviously not move. I won't have that there. So just be aware. And when I have dead batteries, I don't drop them in there. So you never know if they're going to react or still have stuff. So just being conscious.
Yeah. Next question.
Rob Collins in Kansas City, Missouri is up next. He says, how do you place the cameras so that they can be protected from the wood chips that might be flying at the lenses?
Well, it's kind of a hope and a prayer, mostly. But for the most part, when I'm bowl turning, let's see, let's go back. Most of the chips here, if I'm doing a small project, will fall in and around here. If I'm doing a bowl project, most of the chips are going to go back over that way. Some of them are going to go back straight at the lens camera, and sometimes that's a fascinating shot. And so I'll end up having, shavings shoot right at the lens. And so you'll just have to grab your air gun and clean off your lenses. So, but yeah, it's, that's it. The other issue for me is getting stuff on top of my monitor on my, the headshot camera, so I'll have to reach up there sometimes and clean it off. So.
Yeah, I know for a lot of us, when we put stuff into there, we have usually larger cameras and we have lenses on them. We put UV filters on them just so the UV filters can get whacked constantly, and we just replace them after they've been chipped, and then we use them again.
That's a good idea. I should think about doing that because I know I do have a filter. Mag filter sort of gizmo for this RX100. So we think about.
We found that for really high end stuff, we take the filters off because we want to take full advantage of the light, the glass. But putting it close, once you chip the glass, it's on the lens. It's no fun after that. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's back in again, and he says, have you ever thought of connecting with the horse-drawn logging forestry community? You both share a similar ethos, and there could be opportunities for you there.
No, I have not. I don't live in that part of the country, so maybe some Pennsylvania folks might.
Skidders. Next question.
Rodrigo Munez in Stockholm, Sweden is back again, and he asks, what is the remote that you're using?
The remote is a little remote for the Avaya Huddle Cam. So this is, I'm able to do presets. I've got presets 1 through 7 set. So that gives me the different shots around the shop camera. Otherwise, Stream Deck is what I'm using here, and I can certainly walk through some of that.
Next question.
Our favorite colorist, Charles Kline in New York City, is interested in at what RPM would you normally remove the bounce? Does it change for different types of wood?
Yeah, so the lathe bounce, so when I started, you want to put your wood in balance. Typically, I'll do that before a demo. So if I got a log section, I'll get it down to round. So it's not bouncing around too much. I do have all of the cameras, well, except for the overhead. So mounted to, let's go back to that overall shot. That one's on the ceiling, of course, but all these other ones are on this bench behind me, and there's an air gap between the bench and the lathe. I think it was in office hours, and it might have been John or Chris had noticed a bounce in the camera, and so the bench was up against the lathe, and any vibration the lathe had, it was showing in the bench. So this camera's on a microphone. Actually, it's an old lamp, one of those scissor arm lamps, and that's able to swivel. This one is mounted on a desk mount that's got this nice 3-arm sort of articulating arm. I really like this one. So this has been a really good sort of steady mount for this camera. I do need to change this out to sort of a video head instead of just a little ball head. It'll be easier to adjust.
Right.
That's another upgrade, I guess. But otherwise, keeping the cameras separate from the lathe, then your camera work is fine. You just have to worry about the turning.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's.
Next question.
Rupert McRae, Dallas, Texas. Is high resolution in Zoom important to you to capture the detail in your work?
Yes, very much so. In fact, that same gentleman I'd mentioned that started the Lucid community, we got together. There's a group of 10 of us that started a business account, enterprise account. Mm-hmm. And so now I think there's about 16 or 18 of us woodturners that have kind of got this little coalition, and we have a enterprise account. So sometimes we get 1080, but we're always getting 720 at least. So for me, that's important. When I record in 3 places. I record in Zoom. I record on my ATEM Extreme to my disk, SSD, and then I record on my SD card and my Video Assist. I will edit the Zoom audio, bring the Zoom audio in to get the questions from the folks, and splice that in to my, usually my, depending on how tired I am and how much work I want to do. If it's a personal demo that I'm selling to individuals, I'll use the high res, the ProRes file out of there. If it's a club demo and I just want to knock it out, I'll use the ATEM video, and just that'll be good enough, and slice that in because that's still 1080. So, and yeah, then publish it. For the club demos, I publish it to my Vimeo site and send them a private link. And same thing for my personal demos. It'll publish on Vimeo. I'll also post that on my website in a members, a ticket holder only section, basically. Right. So,
yeah. Yep. Have you thought about having a subscription? That people just pay kind of like Patreon or something where they're paying every month, and then you're doing a certain number of turns.
Yeah, I've for my business model, trying to sell to everybody, it's not probably something I'm going to do, but I think there's room for that for some others, for some other turners to take advantage of that kind of model.
Next question.
Alex Goldner in London, our friend, says, do you use excerpts in social media to grow your audience?
In my live streams with StreamYard, I'm able to pull in the YouTube chat. So I certainly do that. And beyond that, I've got a little bug here. I'm starting to integrate or trying to integrate H2R graphics a bit more. I don't, when I stream through StreamYard, I'm streaming to Facebook and YouTube. So I'm able to pull those comments in with StreamYard. If I stream directly from here, which I haven't done yet, directly from the ATEM, just to one location, then that's where I'm trying to integrate H2R graphics to use that social commentary.
Right. So. Next question. Last
Robert
question.
Soji in Los Angeles wonders how you manage the temperature changes in your garage.
Right now, my hands are cold, so not very well.
And the problem is that he's not doing as much work as he normally does. So it's
exactly. My face is fine. My hands are cold because I'm talking too much. But no, it's so I do have so Texas weather in summer is hot, and so I should have done this 20 years ago. I did it 5 years ago. I installed a mini split AC. It's up on the wall here, and so it's a separate AC unit that I've got a separate condenser on the outside, and it's right next to the big house AC unit. But that in the summertime keeps the shop nice and cool all day. So I can be out here when it's 100 degrees outside. I can be in here at 75, which is comfortable. Otherwise, and it's got a heat pump in it. It's just not enough to negate the 25 degrees outside.
Right.
So I'll supplement that with a little space heater. I've insulated the walls. The garage door is insulated. The ceiling is insulated. So that's a bit of work I had to put in to kind of get ready for the AC as well as some electrical. But if you are in a hot climate, and the other bonus for having an AC unit in a shop is humidity control. I no longer get surface rust if I leave my shop for 2 weeks.
Right.
So it's the best thing for surface rust control, especially if you're on the coast or near a humid area. So
that's fantastic. Todd, amazing, really inspirational.
Absolutely. Well, I'll just keep turning. I don't know if you turn off the YouTube, if you guys can still watch.
If you want to jump into the after hours and keep turning, it'd be fun to watch. If that's
sure,
because we're going to jump over to after hours from here. And then what's the YouTube site?
Wood Turning Tool Store. Just search 3 words, wood turning, and then tool and store in YouTube. You'll come up with my channel.
And you got the same as your website. That's just all one.
Yeah, woodturningtoolstore.com. Yep, that's it.
That's awesome. It's so cool. Like what happened was, just for those watching it, that Todd just came on and was turning, and we were like, what is going on over there? And we were really excited about it. And so it's really, really great to see how far you've come.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, and I talked more than I turned, and I apologize for that. So
that's exactly we wanted to learn how you did it, and there'll be lots of opportunities for us to watch the turning. So it was really, really fantastic.
Rupert, thanks for the drop in the chat there. So if you have any questions about what I have here, please drop me an email, or I'm trying to get used to Discord. I'm in there, so you can drop a line, and I can try and answer whatever questions you got about the tech side of this or the turning side.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Todd.
You bet.
And thanks to our producers who have had lots of great questions, kind of pulling it along here. And thanks to of course, our panelists, which we can't do the show without you. So thank you for contributing, being here with all of us. And now we're going to go ahead and jump into after hours, and we'll see you there. All right. Thanks, everybody. See ya.